Welcome, everybody. This session, as you may have read, is Innovate or Die. So the doors will close, and if we don't do something creative, the room explodes. So welcome, my name is Rebecca Steele. I'm thrilled to be here, thanks to Kathy, who gave me the invitation, and Chick, who also included me in this as kind of the room moderator. So I'll be moving around, helping to facilitate what we'll be doing throughout the session. And the way the kind of afternoon will go is Chick's gonna give us some great concepts, and then we're gonna break out into working groups and kind of talk through some how might we statements. So I would like to, after he's done the first kind of concept, have us move into maybe three groups, I think makes the most sense with this crowd. Sure. So that we have enough people in each group to share some different insights and concepts or ideas, knowing that we've all come from various places and have worked in various settings. So I'm Rebecca Steele. I've got the absolute pleasure of being up here with Chick Thompson, who will be leading it, and Dan Weberg, who also is another great innovator and leader in the space, who will share his insights as well. So I'll hand it over to Dan, and then we'll get going.
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. I think this is my 7th year of doing something with Kathy in the conference in some way, and I'm excited to be here. And I'm a nurse innovator. So we got 2 nurse facilitators with you today. So we'll hopefully bring that clinical background to your work. But I want to sort of set the stage for Innovate or Die. Tomorrow I'll do a session where I dive a little bit more, so I won't give away the farm on it. But I want to start us with a quote from Abraham Lincoln. "The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. Our occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise with the occasion. As our case is new, we must think anew and act anew. We must disenthrall ourselves, and then we shall save healthcare." So we're at this moment where we're straddling 2 eras, the volume and the value side, and it takes different leadership to move into those areas, right? And so we're so stuck in the past. Healthcare has a long tradition and history, and it's hard for us to think and break away from some of those traditions because our schools are still stuck in that tradition, both nursing, medicine, and others, as well as our institution structure is built on an industrial revolution model. And we're being asked to break into a network effect, into home care, out of our 4 walls. And it takes a different way of thinking to push organizations which have been stuck in 4-wall care out into the world. And that's the whole point of this conference, right? Telehealth and moving care outside to where people are. So we're going to do some awesome activities today that are innovation brain stimulators. And so there'll be, I think, 4 or 5 different tactics that you can use when you're working with teams to question the status quo. And that's really what today is about, questioning the status quo. And why do we need to question the status quo? Well, there's a lot of fractures that are going on in healthcare right now, from staffing to the way we implement virtual care and taking an in-person model and pushing it, making in-person just a virtual model. We're not really rethinking things all the time. And so there's a number of fractures that keep getting wider. COVID was the earthquake that split those even wider. And so today we really want to push you to think about these, what we call how might we questions, which are ways to phrase questions with the possibilities rather than solutions, and some of the tactics on how you might disrupt our current models and move forward. And Chick's an expert in that, and he's going to move us forward on those different tactics. So he's going to present one of those tactics, and then we're going to facilitate a 10 or 15 minute session around a how might where we actually apply it and we help you work through that tactic. Then we're going to move to the next one and continue through for the day. We'll take a break around 3:30-ish. We'll kind of read the room, take a break, and we'll come back and we'll do some more. So it should be fun. Chick comes from outside of healthcare but has done this with some of the biggest companies on the planet. And so we're learning from our ecosystem and our partners outside of healthcare, which I think is a good thing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chick to start us on the Innovate or Die journey, and we'll have fun, interact, and hopefully not die.
Great. Thanks, Dan. Okay, so as Dan emphasized, the big question is asking the question why. And what's so fascinating to me is if you go and look at the research, we asked why 65 times per day when we were 5 years old. And then it dropped. And we stopped asking why. And by the time we got to be 44,
has everyone had a chance to download the app for the Matrix session?
whoop,
If you haven't, I would like you to do that now. That's what we were just doing.
Chick, I think we're picking up voices from
yes,
some other room, and I'm not sure where it's
that's
coming
what I
from.
heard. Yes.
Yeah. It's weird. It's only coming from the speaker, and it's not anyone in this room. So we'll try to
Okay.
solve for it, but
Is it,
it's
can
a
you
bit
hear
distracting.
me or should I? Yeah, I would say, I guess it's distracting for, yeah.
We'll do that in just a minute. So I'd like to start today by just welcoming you here.
Whoop, it's getting louder.
Start with introducing myself first, and then I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves.
The self-destruct. See, this is the first step.
Yeah.
yeah. The first question, why are we having? See, we could use. Why is the microphone not working? Yeah. I think it's okay.
Yeah, I think you're good
I think
now.
you're good now. I
You're
think
good.
it's stop.
Oh, okay, perfect. All right. So what's fascinating is that when we get to be, whoop, did it start up again?
The moderator, the facilitator today. My background is I've been in healthcare most of my career. I served as the Chief Strategic Development and Marketing Officer for Vidant Health, which has now been rebranded ECU Health in Greenville, North Carolina. If you know anything about North Carolina, it's the eastern part. And we had a rural healthcare system, and with lots of hospitals, community and academic medical center physicians.
I think we have some mental health practitioners in here we can all check in with.
Right.
Yeah.
Does it sound like we got it back?
Yeah, right now it's good.
Okay. All right. So what's fascinating is that we go from 65 whys per day at 5 years of age down to when we get to be 44, and we ask only 6 questions per day. And that is, those questions usually aren't why, they're what, when, where, how. However, we do start asking why again, and that's when we retire. And those questions when we retire, a lot of times are, why did I walk into this room? Which is, you know, that typical why question. I'm 75 years old, and I know some of the questions I ask: where are my keys? Why did I walk into this room? However, the good thing for me is that 30 years ago, I teamed up with a gentleman that was in his late 70s, as I am now, and his name was Dr. Deming. And we were teaching total quality management to General Motors. I was doing the creative side. He was doing the statistical analytical side. And he taught me a technique. And the technique that he taught me was, when you ask why 5 times in a row to get to the root cause of your challenge. Now, we were talking to General Motors about automobile manufacturing and Six Sigma, TQM, and all that. Well, I was 55 years old, early 50s. I was a marathoner. And I had just gone into my internist in Charlottesville and said, my knees hurt. And his comment was, stop running marathons. And I said, please don't tell a runner not to run. Just give me some drugs. So he gave me Vioxx, and then that came off the market. And 2 years later, I went back to him and I go, I stopped running. I just can't run any longer. I've stopped playing tennis. My elbows hurt. And he goes, hey, you know, you're mid 50s. And I go, why? Why do they hurt? And he goes, I don't know. So I did my own brainstorming, my 5 whys. And I go, why would my bones hurt in my mid 50s? Well, I have a bad gut. They call it IBS. Now they determine that I have Crohn's disease, but we didn't know that back then. Well, what do they put me on for Crohn's disease when I have flare-ups? Prednisone. Well, why would prednisone affect my bones? Whoa, I'm lactose intolerant. I just checked, my vitamin D levels are low. I go, wow, whoa, why didn't anybody catch this? And then I go to my doctor, back to my doctor internist, and I said, hey, could I have osteoporosis? And he looked right at me and he said, Chick, you're a hypochondriac. men don't get osteoporosis. And I said, Bob, his name was Bob Ogie. I said, Bob, I want a second opinion. I went to a female internist named Martha Barnett. She said, we're going to get a DEXA scan. I said, okay. So I go to UVA's Women's Center to get a DEXA scan, and they look at me and they go, oh, we don't do men. We don't do very men. We got to set up the machine differently. Well, they found out that I had the worst case of osteoporosis of a male they've ever seen. I'm a grand rounds patient now. I'm on all black spot therapies. I just came off of a year on Evenity, which was a really tough year. I've been on Reclass and all the various drugs. The good news is, at 75, I am not in a wheelchair. But you know what Dr. Obi said when he found out I had osteoporosis? He started crying and he said, I never asked the right questions. That's why we have to ask why 5 times. Because there are people out there, and it's not just patients, it's our kids, it's kids in school. When we see a problem, we got to ask why. But then don't stop there. You ask, well, why did that occur? Well, why did that occur? And so just to close out on that is that I'm a scientist. My first boss out of, I graduated University of Delaware as a chemistry major, mathematician. And I got hired not by DuPont because I didn't have the grades for DuPont. And also you needed 2 years of German to become a chemist for DuPont because all the chemistry literature was in German. I didn't even pass English. I'm severely dyslexic, so I could never go to work for DuPont. They didn't want me. So I went to work for a little startup in Newark, Delaware, created by a guy named Bill Gore. Bill Gore was my boss. I was one of the few chemists in the lab, and the product we came up with in 1969 and 1970 was called Gore-Tex. You might have heard of Gore-Tex. But my challenge was to come up with products, a new product every Friday, and to go and run a brainstorm. The word brainstorm wasn't even used back then in 1970. It was invented in 1948 in the advertising industry. So I learned everything about brainstorming in 1969, 1970, and we were trying to come up with ideas, and it wasn't working. And then I had my first operation because, as you know, if people have Crohn's disease, we normally have first operation in our late teens. So I had my first stomach operation. I'm in the hospital in Wilmington, Delaware, and I say to the nurse after my operation, I said, I've been here for 2 days. This mattress is hot. And she said, all mattresses are hot. And I said, why? And she said, because we don't want your body fluids to get into the mattress because we can't clean the mattress. So we put plastic under the cotton sheet. And I go, what if we put Gore-Tex, which was a permeable, breathable Teflon material? So I asked if I could do an experiment. I said, because I thought I was getting, I then learned about the cubital ulcers and bed sores and the whole thing. So I said, hey, let's try out this Gore-Tex bed sheet on the hospital. The nurse was willing to try. We put it on an orthopedic patient, and the patient slipped out of bed because Gore-Tex has a low coefficient of friction, and there goes the patient. Everybody made fun of me, even at Gore. And for a week, I kept saying, what? I think this is a great idea, but what went wrong? I kept asking questions. Well, who would want the slipperiest bed? That was the breakthrough question. Just think now, who in a hospital would want the slipperiest, inert, breathable bed and could not slip out of bed because there were rails on their bed? Somebody shouted out.
They're saying children, maybe.
Children, good. And I always go for 3 or 4 ideas. Another one.
Bariatric patients.
Bariatric, good, good. Another one.
Older patients.
Yep.
Or immobile.
Good. Who might also need to have their wound debrided?
Burn.
That became our first product, medical product out of Gore-Tex. There are now over 5,000 medical products made with Gore-Tex, but the first one you now know in 1970 was the Gore-Tex hospital bed sheet. It was a 3/4 sheet for burn patients, and burn patients still around the world are on that Gore-Tex sheet. Every time I think of our wounded warriors at Walter Reed, or Brookings, Brook Army Hospital, which is where I did the test market, I cry for about 15 minutes. My point is, ideas didn't come from being at Gore in a brainstorming session. Ideas came from lying in bed, being the patient, experiencing the hot mattress, asking why, coming up with an idea, failing forward, and having people on my side, and, you know, to team up and to not go and say, boy, that's a stupid idea. Without knowing, they used improv. They built on my ideas with yes and. So what I want to ask you all to do now is, you know, we're talking about, we all need innovation, and we write about it. We put it in our mission statements. We tell our kids about it. We tell our kids that you're going to have to invent your career, because as we know, 50% of the careers that exist now aren't going to exist, you know, 10 to 15 years from now. Well, why then aren't we as innovative as a 5-year-old? Why does our creativity go down? What are our 5 whys? What can help us get to the root cause of why isn't healthcare the most innovative industry sector on the planet? So you got 10 minutes to ask why a couple of times of your colleagues, and let's get to some root causes. And again, there are no buts. There are no negative thinking during this. It's like, these are ideas. These are, as we said, these are possibilities. So play with me for 10 minutes about why aren't we as innovative? What gets in our way? And then why does that happen? Go, have fun.
So if we can kind of move and segment ourselves maybe into 3 separate groups and just talk amongst each other to kind of ask these whys around why is it challenging to find innovation in the environments that we work, then we can each group can kind of quickly report out. We'll have 10 minutes to do it. So I see one group forming here. I think maybe a section can kind of scoot this way, and there can be a group in the back. And we just turn around and talk amongst ourselves, and Dan and I'll come around and drop in some thoughts too.
So you have to ask 5 whys. Why is innovation hard in healthcare? Or what's the barrier to innovation in healthcare from your perspective? And you have to go at least 5 whys deep.
So our challenge, Dan?
Your challenge is to ask 5 whys around why is healthcare so hard to do? Why is innovation so hard to do in healthcare? And so try and dig deep into the fundamental issues using the 5 whys.
Tell. One thing is Democratic go. So it's a negative. You're starting with a negative, at least on the clinic.
Why don't people like take watching that live?
I was going to say, do you want to name Faco, or do you want to just leave in general? primary care offices with the same condition, and you have 3 completely different experiences. So a lot of variations, and sometimes it's a little bit weird, the luck of the draw, whether you get sent right away on the
Sort of like check. Oh, we don't do this.
So
Then don't have osteoporosis.
so there's an enormous amount of variation.
right? Like, oh, last started again, let's just build this next piece of red, maybe no, do that, right? And then all of a sudden you vector off into the head.
So
It's very small blocks.
I would, is it training? Variability in training.
Why did they make it so hard to get out? Why?
Training in residency is, you're learning the practice, but you're learning the art from your mentor, right? So there's a certain craft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perpetuation of what has been.
Yeah.
In the definition of training, you're not allowed to stray question. Your neurons are hardened as well.
Pathological, that's what you're
Yes.
saying.
Why do people then blame
Everybody else in the world is doing anything we agree to try to do.
Still bring it in.
But like, okay, it's better than it was like that's really tough.
I've been involved in a lot
I would have thought that you say
Well,
you
yes,
get some of these
yeah,
mass people trying to evaluate them, but I never see them now. On video, every time I'll do it, every now and then.
Because I can see their
I can
whole
see it.
environment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I can see it.
You know, I love that.
Why is it so much better to see that in person? You know what I mean? And that's the big one. It's a lot of work.
Well, I think you gotta keep the skill up. You
Yeah.
feel like you can do that easily.
You're right.
What I'm concerned is that physicians are very comfortable in the standard way how they've always done it. Again, our physician mantras that you present yourself with authority, with confidence, that based on the information gathered, you can make a quick decision and you stand by it. So, you know, or these confidence in achieve the plan, let's say, communicate that, and you can.
It's just for show.
Which is usually a new lab or something.
Right, I don't have to be listening to what it is, but I do it because I know the patient wants it.
But so what we have found is the physician has the webcam and the Zoom license, but they don't know what to do, right? And this is the word that doesn't.
Right, and you have to hear.
Why are you creating more transportation?
Because they can't be constantly.
But they've never been actually trained. We've done 20 minutes of training.
Yes, now it is becoming a point of view.
That's part of the curriculum. So I wanted to, but there's a stat that after training, after med school,
Why is that?
practice changes 3 to 4 times.
All that training that you got,
Organizational change.
you're the newbie on the block, you're not
Information.
No, that's how you learn. You run an
that
experiment.
organization doesn't
Yeah.
even allow.
Do that with patients. Get back to your, you know.
Yeah. Or you can do a paper. Or, there are ways to. The Hippocratic method is trial and error. Or, sorry, the scientific method is. Words aren't flowing. The scientific method is trial and error. You have I live in upstate New York. Kodak reminds us every day that, you know, you invented digital and then you don't engineer the crossover, you're gonna die.
Forward in innovation when it's completely disrupted.
When
The norm is no longer possible.
He was in there,
Yeah, right, exactly. That's
the
exactly.
patent for digital
Right.
filing, they just had so many assets. Acetate, chemistry, all that.
Okay.
Everybody can now be innovative. Lovely, we can live.
Are we getting close to our time?
We will here in just a minute.
All right, that's why you're coming by.
No, I just wanted to see if I could help add some thoughts to what you guys are talking about.
Okay. Yeah, I would. Hey, Rebecca, I'd love to hear some whys.
Yeah, I think maybe we let this group's go. They've got one good thread that's going, and then once
Great.
they kind of wrap up, we'll open it and have each group share a few whys.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 more minutes, and then we'll share whys. Wow. Why is it so hard to innovate and create space to innovate? That could be like regulatory, right? That's what we said.
All the stuff that was sort of on the back burner.
So if you make half of it, right, risk adjusted, like, if we do risky, they don't make themselves possible. Everybody else.
So why don't we just
Exactly. Why don't we cause our own crisis?
All right, folks, 2-minute timer is up. We're going to walk around the room and see if we can get some, let Chick hear some of the whys and let us all learn from each other. So maybe we'll start over here on this side.
Oh, and can I just throw out one thing? When you hear some of the whys, the typical response in a brainstorm is to just think and to build on it in your head, and then maybe in conversation also, rather than, but I don't know if I agree with that. It's all about improv.
Awesome. So who wants to be a spokesperson for this group and share some whys?
I just took the notes. I think David wants to be with the microphone. Okay. Well, we first went all over the place, like a Hippocratic oath, right? Do no harm is the reason why innovation is stifled in healthcare. Regulations, that when you break regulations, there's consequences there. As well, and that kind of variance, healthcare is built on not on standardization, but on predictability or on a standard approach. Although we also talked about that if you visit 3 different primary care physicians, you get 3 different experiences as well. So there's a lot of variation actually there. But so yeah, and then we went a little bit deeper, looked at malpractice insurance and why is that. Anything else somebody wants to add?
Awesome. Thanks, Christian.
Sure.
Maybe the group back there.
Nobody wants that.
I don't.
Hi, everybody. I think what we were mainly focused on was why we're afraid of change in healthcare and what different barriers kind of come up when we do want to have some kind of change. I don't know what else we can add. Fear of failure. Yeah. Why are we afraid of failure? Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big question, Chick, from that group was, they said, why does every leap forward in medicine, or the perception that every leap forward in medicine is due to some massive crisis, COVID or an earthquake or what, name your thing. And that's when the big leaps happen, when we adopt what we should have adopted 10 or 15 years ago. So that was an interesting insight.
Which makes me think of COVID and how it was just this perfect space for innovation because all the rules just kind of melted away, right? Everybody was like, do whatever.
Yeah. So why does it take an act of God to move healthcare forward?
Yeah, and I can talk about that and explain. So should I add to that, or is there another group that wants to say
There's one more
anything?
group, and then then back to you, Chick.
Okay, so we heard echoes of what we said from your group, but we started off by no one likes change, and they don't like change because they have experience doing things the way they are, and the reason they have experience the way they are doing what they were before was because when they did try something different, some things may not have worked out, so they have fear. And then they have fear also because there's certain regulations and certain things are paid for and you have to do things a certain way. And then the reason things are like that is because there are very strong power dynamics. And we decided it's a circle.
And now back to you, Chick.
Great, thanks.
Ron
So
Burgundy.
I'm going to play off of, because I teach through analogy. So I'm going to compare the risk in healthcare with the risk in the intelligence community. So we would have to say that if you're talking about all those three-letter agencies, CIA, DIA, NRO, all of them, high risk. So I got a call 2 weeks after 9/11. It just said caller ID unknown. I got a call, and it was from the deputy director of the CIA. And he said, a report just came on out and said that the reason why 9/11 happened and we didn't catch it is because if you look at the report, 9/11 Commission, lack of imagination. We did not connect the dots. So he said, could you design a program for us to teach all of our folks? And I said, well, I'll be glad to try something. And he said, however, we've got to first get you a security clearance and do all the background check, and that will take 2 years. And I go, well, I guess that's your first hurdle. You got to figure out how to get me to teach without waiting 2 years, because Congress is not going to wait 2 years. So we got creative. We brought people down in buses to Charlottesville, Virginia, offsite. So therefore, I didn't have to go through security up there. We just started slowly. And now that's my main client. That's where I'll be next week. That's where I'll be tomorrow. That's why I couldn't be down there live. I'll be up with National Reconnaissance Office tomorrow. And I think we're going to be talking about a drone that just got shot down yesterday. So I run brainstorms for them, everything from North Korea to the various things. But the techniques that I'm going to be sharing with you, whether it be asking 5 whys, are what is really helping the agency going look at things. And I want to just give a COVID analogy here. 3 years ago, December, I got 25 of the top leaders of the agency, CIA. We're in an offsite. And I said, what's your biggest challenge right now? Besides, you know, we've already talked about Russia, China, and Korea, things like that. They go, workforce. We can't hire young people. They don't want to come to work for the agency. They want to go to work for Google or AWS. And I go, what do you think is the biggest thing that young people want? They said they want to be able to work from home. Okay. So I said, what would have to be true for the agency to allow new hires to do some of their work from home? And one of the officers said, just nonchalantly, well, if there was a global pandemic. 2 months later, COVID hits. They still talk about that. They got guess what? A number of folks worked from home. Now, some of us, when we grew up, we saw Get Smart and the cone of silence, you know, and the shoe and the whole thing. Well, they had to start figuring out, how do we create a cone of silence at someone's home? So you're exactly right. Innovation happens when bad stuff happens. That's been the way it is throughout history. And as you know about patients that make changes in their life after the heart attack. So all I'd say is play with the techniques we're going to be sharing. And what I want you to think out is, if you got that patient and you're trying to educate them, think about what we're trying to talk about today is preventative. We want to give you some techniques. So that next big challenge, or that you can break through, that you've got the skill sets to get through it. But yeah, I understand Hippocratic Oath. I understand the fear of failure, the challenges and all of that. So that's what I want to get into right now. I want to go and talk about how to frame a question. So my friends at a company called IDEO created this concept. They call it, how might we? That when you frame a question, innovative question, you go, how might we do something? How suggests that we don't have the answer. Might emphasizes that there are different pathways to thinking about solutions. And the we is that, hey, we're going to work on this together, and maybe who should be on our team. So our first question that we want to brainstorm now is, how might we create a culture that fosters innovation and allows ideas to incubate in our environment? So I want to dig deep. I know some of you are in, some of you are in psychology, some are in psychiatry. You're going to know so much more about the brain than I do. My world is looking at the things that come out of left side of the brain, right side of the brain, and understanding the fact that left brain is a little more verbal than the right side of the brain. Right side of the brain is more intuitive. Left brain's more detailed, logical. Left brain loves to write those book reports with 1,000 words and those outlines. Remember those outlines, Roman numeral 1, A, B, little a, little b, all that? The right brain goes, screw that. I'm just gonna write the book report and then fake the outline. Or in my case, since I'm severely dyslexic, I didn't do very well in writing the book report. I just drew pictures of the Moby Dick or the ship and all that. And I got an A for the picture and a D for the writing in the book report. And that gave me a C, and a C was good enough for me to get all the way through high school. It did not work in college, but it got me through high school. But the difference between the left and brain that I want to talk about is that I want your brain to be agile. Now, I want your brain to be able to go back and forth between left side being more analytical, right side being more creative whenever you need it. So how do I test you for that? Well, Dr. Stroke created this exercise 70 years ago, and they actually used this exercise at Google to go and weed out candidates. So now this is not a trick question. You're going to do it by yourself, but just to warm up, the left brain, the analytical side of the brain, can read those words really well inside of that black box. Just say out loud, what are those two words inside of the black box? Good. Yellow, white. Good. The right brain doesn't read words very well. It sees more colors, recognizes colors. So tell me, what are the colors of those two words in the black box?
Yellow and white.
Good. No trick. This is not a trick. None of this is a trick. But now comes the quiz. I am going to test you. I want you to read the words now from left to right and top down as fast as you can. And that will be your left brain. And I'm going to time you and I'll let you know. So I want you to do it out loud in mass. Read the words when I say go. And then I'll tell you how fast this group is from left to right and top down when I say go. And it's just the words. You're using the left brain. So get ready, out loud, the words, go.
Yellow, white, green, blue, red, white, yellow, blue, white, red, green, yellow, white, blue, green.
Great. 7 seconds. That's smoking. Do you know that a fifth grader takes 13 seconds to do that? So you're faster than a fifth grader, which is great. And we already just said a fifth grader, you know, asks all those whys and creative and all of that. So you're faster than a fifth grader. But that's the left brain. That's the side of the brain that can tell you if your idea is bad or what's wrong with it. What about the right creative side of the brain, the side of the brain that actually comes up with the idea? So I want you to go now and read from left to right and top, bottom, not the words, but the colors out loud. And I want you to try to do it as quickly as you read the words, because your goal is for your left brain and your right brain to be together. So get ready to read the colors, left to right and top down when I say go, the colors only. Go.
Yellow, white, blue, green, yellow, red, white, yellow, blue, red, white, blue.
And now we got to pass out Tylenols to everybody. My point is, that's the way every adult group is. And it was 18 seconds.
The question is, what about the fifth graders?
Oh, no, they're the same. They're 13. They're 13 and 13 for fifth graders. But adults are 7 or 8 seconds for reading the left brain, but then the right brain is 18 to 23 seconds. So the challenge is, when you go to try to solve a problem, your left side of your brain goes and looks at it first. And if you want to go and read some about it, my friend Malcolm Gladwell wrote a couple of books that talk about it, but one's called Blink. But most people, you want your intuitive side to come on first. Whether you're seeing a patient, whether you're trying to run a brainstorm, when you're trying to fix a car. Get that intuitive side in a little bit first so you can analyze, maybe get some of that, and then bring in that analytical side. But unfortunately, what happens for most adults is the analytical side comes in first. The intuitive side has apathied. And that's why Malcolm Gladwell says so often why we make our first instinctual thoughts are wrong, because we're using the left side of the brain versus the right side of the brain. So what I want to show you is, how do you go and spark this right side of the brain? One thing you can do, this is my favorite technique. Hopefully some of you have a watch on. I've got my Apple Watch on. So I want you to move your watch from your normal arm to your other arm just for this afternoon. So just go and move your watch to the other arm. It might take about 30 seconds. And if you don't have a watch on, you say, hey, thank goodness I didn't wear a watch. Then move a piece of jewelry or move your cell phone from one pocket to the other. And you're going to go, why? You just taught us to ask why. Why did you want me to move my watch? Because you are so patterned. When you go to look to tell the time, you're now going to look at your wrong arm. And every time you look at your wrong arm this afternoon or tonight, I want you to put a smile on your face. Rather than get frustrated, just put a smile on your face, because you want to know the best way to engage both hemispheres of your brain to have an agile brain. Smile. Those are not my words. Those are the words by one of my closest friends, dear friends, Virginia Beach, the head of Operation Smile, Dr. Bill McGee, plastic surgeon, severely dyslexic. He says he can tell when somebody's 44. Their face is terminally serious. Go, whoa. It's that noticeable. So I came up with this challenge for Bill, and I said, I'm going to challenge people from here on out. 1 day a week, move your watch to your other arm, because maybe that will break the terminal seriousness. The other thing I do is whenever I go grocery shopping, I go grocery shopping at a store called Wegmans. There's 4 entrances to Wegmans. Every time I go grocery shopping, I go in a different entrance and I start in a different aisle. What that does is break your patterns. And you're going to go, yeah, that takes a lot of time. Well, I get to tell you that the assistant director of the FBI came up to me 6 months ago when I mentioned that I was up at Quantico teaching. And he goes, you just saved people's lives by throwing out that strategy. I said, what? I was just trying to get them to open their brain. He goes, you know, when people go shopping in a mall or a department store, they never look around for the other entrances or exits. But when there's a shooting episode in a mall or a department store, they try to go out the entrance or exit that they came in. And a lot of them die because they didn't know that there were 3 or 4 other exits. He says, a lot of people don't know there are other exits to their apartment or their home. They never talk about it. He said, so keep pushing that concept. That will keep people safe. So this is what I do. I mean, all I do is run brainstorms, but it's amazing how it applies to FBI, CIA, telehealth, Gore. The world needs to know what are the questions to ask. And the questions I want you to ask are why, and then the responses to ideas. The left brain always says yes, but. The right brain loves yes, and. My goal is just be curious first. When you hear someone's idea, especially one of your students' ideas, be curious first. What's right about it before you tell them what's wrong with it? And all of a sudden, you're going to be making your organization more innovative, just like that. Because what happens when someone hears yes, but, as my psychiatrist and psychologist friends know, and just to let you know, I'm so old, I used to work with the psychiatrist Albert Ellis. That's how I go back with rationally motive therapy. I drew cartoons for him way back in the day. So yes, but leads people into what we call fight, flight, and freeze. They're going to fight you, they're going to run away from you, or brain's going to lock up and they're not going to come up with any ideas. The biggest yes, but in the world is it's not in the budget. And I say to them, when I hear an organization that says it's not in the budget, I say, go and get Blazing Saddles and put the toll booth scene on on screen for everyone in your department to watch. Remember the toll booth? Bad guys are coming through the desert to wipe out Rockridge, and the sheriff of Rockridge puts a toll booth up and charges a dime. It's called a petamine toll booth. The bad guys come up to the toll booth and say, anybody got a dime? We got to go back to town and get a shitload of dimes, he said. So they go back to town, get a shitload of dimes, and then they go through the toll booth one at a time. And I'm going, if you were 5 years old, I say to the kids, if you were 5 years old, how would you get through the toll booth? One kid said, I'd go around the world the other way. Another kid said, I'd go underneath. Another kid said, I'd dig a hole under it. Another kid said, I'd put a dime on a string and then I would pull up. But my favorite one, a kid said, I would tell the toll taker, my dad's paying for everyone, but he's at the end of the line. So my point is, I'm not trying to break any Hippocratic oath. I'm not trying to break the rules for engagement for the CIA or the FBI. However, we got to find ways for our folks to be able to do work from home, no matter where you are, no matter where you work. And so we have to be able to go and have, so I got my dream job. I wanted to be a cartoonist for Walt Disney more than I wanted to be a chemist for Gore. And I got my dream job in 1976. I got hired to build Epcot, the health pavilion. And that was my dream. And 3 months on the job, I'm in a brainstorm. Ray Bradbury, who wrote Fahrenheit 451, is the facilitator of the brainstorm. And we're talking about what kind of technology and how do we distribute health education materials in the health pavilion of Epcot, which is what my responsibility was. And I said, I've just heard about this new technology. It's called Betamax. And it's a videotape. What if we go and put Disney stuff on videotape and we distribute it to everybody that comes to Epcot and they can watch healthcare at home? And you'll never guess what the head of Disney said in response to that idea. I thought this was a brainstorm. He said, our cartoons will never go on videotape as long as I'm the president of Walt Disney. And what I learned from that is that we can become blind to our own blindness. And you can't see blind spots. We hear them when people go and say, our cartoons will never go on videotape. I stayed 3 more months. I quit. I teamed up with 2 doctors in Charlottesville, Virginia, which was home for me, the head of health, student health at UVA, and an OBGYN at what's called then Martha Jefferson Hospital, Jim Turner. And we started a healthcare cartoon company. Our first program was an animated penis putting on a condom. It even had dance music to it. Our next movie was called Herpy, the new BD around town. We did the first educational program on genital herpes. And then in 1981, before the disease had a name, we created the first educational program on HIV, which was used in the Ryan White case. We now have our center, Ryan White Center at UVA. And in 1984, I sold my healthcare cartoon company to a company called Encyclopedia Britannica, which probably no longer exists. But my point is, yes, but negates everything that came before it. Yes, and says, I want to have a dialogue. And so I encourage you, if you want to go and have a culture in your organization, and don't worry, you don't have to worry about fear of failure with yes, but versus yes, and we're not digging into that Hippocratic oath. My point is, if you just use the yes, and you build, all of a sudden that atrophy, that right brain starts again. So here's my first exercise. We're not going to break off to do this. I'll just do this live. 2 years ago, a friend of mine, I'm a golfer, sent me this little video. This golf club was on Kickstarter. somebody said they wanted to create a swingless golf club that if you press a button on the shaft of the golf club, it would an explosion would go off and the golf ball would go 150 yards straight, or it would hook, or it would curve, or it go 75 yards. You program that in. It was going to cost $1,000. And my friend sent it to me, go, God, this is the stupidest idea ever, a swingless golf club at $1,000. What's the yes and? What's right about this? And who could this allow to play golf that can't play golf now? Go.
Children's, people with injuries, blind.
Good. Two more.
What's that? Handicap?
Yeah.
Bad golfers.
Bad golfer. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Because everybody said, I can't play golf. I stink. So you know who I got it for? One of my friends from 40 years who I used to play golf with that has Parkinson's. It was worth $1,000 to see him be able to play. My point is, that golf club's going to come down, but think about the grandparents that would love to be able to play with the grandkids. Think about, so there is a possibility. That was one of the coolest presents I've ever been able to give somebody, because he had been told he can't play golf anymore. Oh, well, he could chip and putt, but he couldn't swing the golf club because he would fall over. But here, he could play with all of us. So be curious first for the first 15 seconds. That's all I'm asking. I'm not saying when someone throws out an idea, tell them all day long, what a great idea. No, just for 15 seconds, be curious first. And say to yourself, what would have to be true for this to be a good idea? Just like I told you about the CIA, where they said we'd like to be able the ability to work from home. What would have to be true for this to be a good idea? Global pandemic. So your breakout now, this is just going to be a shorter breakout. This is just because based on timing and everything, this might just be about 5 minutes. I want to know the yes buts. What are the yes buts that you hear in telemedicine? And then I want you to also think of the opposite. What are the empowering phrases that you also hear? Because the goal is to eliminate the buts and turn them into some empowering things. I already told you the big one is, yes, but it's not in the budget. I'm sure you can come up with 5 to 7 more yes buts that might even be more powerful than it's not in the budget. And then I want to find out, what are some yes ands that you've used to get past some of those buts when you knew you needed to do this for this patient or for this department or for this idea you had. So let's go 5 to 7 minutes and let's see what you come up with.
So start with your yes buts, which should be pretty easy.
Start with yes buts.
Yep, start with your yes buts, which should be pretty easy, and then we'll move into the yes ands.
You got it.
We've never done it before.
Yeah, reimbursement.
I'm not gonna get paid. Personnel. I don't have enough people or time to do this.
Chick, I just looked at the wrong arm for the time, so you got me.
Oh, perfect. You made my day, Rebecca.
want telehealth, they want to come in, right? They don't like technology. So, yeah, how do you feel about technology?
What about my nice office that they won't see?
Okay, so let me see if I got this. They want to leave their home.
Yes, buts are easily flying. Should we switch for
Good.
time to yes ands?
Yeah, let's go over to yes and now.
Yes ands.
And the way to do that is to see if they can flip that yes but. You've just heard that yes but. How would you counter it? How diffuse it? How do you diffuse it with a yes and?
All right, so switch to your yes ands. Take some of the buts, and how would you diffuse it? Yeah.
My biggest yes and is yes and telehealth is better than no care.
I want to hear a yes but and a yes and, you know.
All right. Rebecca's got the mic. She's going to find a couple sharers.
Yes, but we don't have the personnel
Great.
or resources. And so it was, well, yes, and how do we maximize the resources that we have? Can we do training? Can we cross-train? Can we hire interns? Can we hire volunteers? That's the yes and.
Fantastic.
The yes, but are we providing quality care? And yes, but you can't do surgical patients. So yes, and could we find one surgical patient, one diagnosis we could do, and yes, and we could actually see people in their environments and notice their social determinants of health.
Great.
One yes and that we had that I really liked is that they talk about the physical exam, but it was yes and they don't touch us when we're in person anyway, and this was in reference to to an orthopedic visit.
Yeah. Yes, and no latex allergy.
Right. Yes.
We had a couple examples here. Yes, but it's not as good as in person. But yes, and it's better than no visit at all. Or yes, but I don't have the technical capabilities to do it, or technical abilities. And yes, and you can learn new skills.
Sure. No, excellent.
One more.
Yes,
Yes,
but it's
please.
not in the budget. How about yes, and what's the cost of not doing this?
Yes. And we're going to talk about the concept of opposites. The right and left brain, if you think about it, is almost like a yin yang opposite. So just what you just stated there, it's not in the budget, but then the opposite of that, what would be the cost of not doing it? So we will use that technique. We're just going to do one more technique for 20 minutes, and then we will be doing our break. I call the break 4 B's: brain, bladder, butt, blackberry. I know you don't have blackberries, but it has a B in it. So we need a break. The brain, I've always said to my audiences, the brain goes an hour and a half, bam, then you need 15 minutes. Because sometimes that 15-minute break, you never know who you might meet too. That's an important thing during a break or a conversation that you could be having. So where I want to go now, the reason why I'm a cartoonist, did any of you ever play a game growing up called Mousetrap? So just if you did, just raise a hand. All right. So that was invented by Rube Goldberg, and he was my neighbor growing up. He's the reason I'm a cartoonist. He was my mentor. I actually have a copy in my home of the first Mousetrap game. It's on display. He created that in 1963. There's Rube drawing his cartoons, and there's a little cartoon he drew for me. I was 10 years old at the time. You'll see it says, "Good wishes to Charles Thompson." I used then at 10 my proper name rather than Chick. I was born in 1948. If you know, I have the Interesting distinction to being one of 1 million children around the world being born to mothers that took an experimental drug called DES. DES was used to prevent miscarriage, and then they found out it causes cancer. So there's 1 million of us. The women, unfortunately, get cervical cancer. The men, I've had prostate, and I have endocrine issues. Also made me the shortest kid in school with the deepest voice, which you have these hormonal issues. I reached puberty about 10, but I was like 4'9". So I got into, but I was called Chick because I was born 2.5 months premature in 1948 because I was put in an incubator. I had blonde hair and a nurse said I looked like a chicken. So that's why it was called Chick. My parents had 3 martinis, I mean, at dinner all the time. So I always said it was the martinis allowed them to, you know. My brother was then born a couple years later. He had red hair and they called him Brick. So we were Chick and Brick. And when I got to school, of course, the boys called me Chicken Shit because I was the shortest kid and the whole thing. So I changed my name to Charles to try to stop some of the bullying. But Rube was my mentor. And there's the type of cartoon that Rube used to draw. Rube taught me brainstorming. He didn't call it brainstorming because I wouldn't call it back then. But Rube said, the average person goes from A to B as fast as possible. He said he likes to go from A to B using all the letters of the alphabet. To me, that's what brainstorming is all about. Logic says go from A to B, my as is to my to be state as fast as possible. But imagination, as Einstein says, gets you everywhere else. So divergent thinking is what brainstorming is. You go off and say, well, what about this? Let's try this. You experiment. And then you converge and you bring it back down. So I will give you an example. But first, the how might we question. How might we create time and space for innovation in telemedicine and in our life, our personal life? How might we create time and space for innovation? So our divergent thinking piece is what analogy can redefine what's possible for us? Not just any analogy, what atypical analogy could redefine. So I had to use this 15 years ago when one of my friends, another UVA graduate, Dr. Bill McGee went to UVA, and so did Dr. Toby Cosgrove. All 3 of us are severely dyslexic. All 3 of us were told we'll never amount to anything. They would never be able to go to medical school. Well, Toby, at that time, was a thoracic surgeon, and then he went on to become the CEO of the Cleveland Clinic. And he had me come on out and run a brainstorm for the ER department and said, how could we redefine an emergency department for thinking from heart patients, stroke patients? We weren't talking telemedicine, but boy, I wish we could have. How would we redefine it? And I had to figure out how do I think differently about this? Because at that time, I had never really been to an ER. And I go, how would a NASCAR pit crew redefine the ER experience? So I went down to North Carolina to a pit crew camp. I spent a day there. I got taught the basics of a pit crew, which are safety first, to get safety, and then speed, simplicity, self-confidence, shared vision. Those are the 5 S's of a pit crew. So I asked the dumb question of the pit crew chief, would you folks come and present how you do this? And actually, could we maybe bring a car and change the wheels and do all that in front of an ER team? I've run this brainstorm for 5 hospital systems in the United States now. And they enjoy it. it's an atypical analogy to get to redefine what's possible. Dominion Energy, like this example, and they had me present it at Lake Anna Nuclear Power Plant to go and help them redefine the safety protocol for the nuclear power plant. So what I want you to do is to think like a pit crew: safety, speed, simplicity, self-confidence, shared vision. How could a pit crew redefine a telehealth experience? I don't know. But I thought it would be a really wild, atypical analogy that's gonna stretch you. So remember, the thoughts are speed, simplicity. So a lot of times, as the person mentioned about, well, if it's not in the budget, what if we don't do it? What will it cost? Thinking the opposite. To deal with the speed thing, you could say, what slows us down in telehealth? What clouds our vision? What reduces our self-confidence in telehealth? You know, what makes things more complex? But just play with those 5 S's of safety, speed, simplicity. Visualize a pit crew in your mind. Now, it could be a gaming virtual pit crew, but visualize it. How could a pit crew help you reimagine the telehealth experience? And we'll go for 10 minutes and then report out.
And then we'll take a break.
Yep.
So pit crew it up. How could a pit crew change telehealth? If you took that approach, what would it look like?
Okay, let's hear some.
Okay.
So when someone now,
Give
now
1
the
minute,
new
we're gonna wrap them
guidelines-
up.
Yeah, when someone goes and throws out one of their thoughts, someone in another team needs to play off of it with a yes and. I want to
Okay.
practice that yes and.
Got it. So we want to share out, and then someone needs to jump off of it with a yes and. So that's what we'll do for this one.
Perfect.
Take for this group. You wanna do it?
Where do you start? Like
Anything. Pick one of the boxes that you talked about.
And then one of the other groups has to respond with a yes.
Yeah, so quite often, between what slows us down and complicates at work, in particularly in telemedicine, is the technology and its adoption. So that's yes part or yes and if you want me to answer that as well, or somebody
No, one of
else?
the other groups has to say yes and that. So technology was the issue, which I heard on all the groups, I think. So yes and.
Yes, and we could help the patients in some ways with the technology that we have.
And let's do, I want 3 more yes ands. Build.
Yes, and it will be complicated. Perhaps that's where training and more hands-on, more training resources and things could fill the gap.
Okay, great. And?
Yeah, I think I can take this one.
Yes, and the technology should disappear entirely into the background.
Great, that's our goal. Perfect. And we'll let the patient know that too. Good. One more and.
Yes, and how did you learn how to use your phone?
Good. I love it. There it is. There it is.
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, one more example of thinking like a pit crew. Did it give you any ideas?
Are we doing which square?
Doesn't matter.
Yep. Okay. For shared vision, we people were saying they're afraid that telehealth is going to replace what they do now.
Yes, and?
Yes, and they're worried that automation is going to, machines are going to take over their jobs too.
Yes, and?
Yes, and you need to be open to the experimentation, and that will basically get the fear out. I think we're all sort of predetermine that technology is not going to work. That's the starting point. So just to play with the technology will help.
And?
Yes, and it may create new opportunities that were not there before.
Yes, and
yes.
100 years ago, the physician got on a horse and buggy and visited us at home on the kitchen table.
Yes, and barbers did surgery, so.
Right, right. So you got it, you nailed it. So it's this fun brainstorming is this fun conversation of asking a question, then finding some atypical analogy, see if it opens up your mind, then throwing out an idea and then playing and off of it. And now you can start going, okay, well, what of those things we threw out can we run with, can we expand with? But that's to me what brainstorming's all about. When we come back from break, it's 3:30 and I am really all about time and your time. When we come back, anyone here ever had a Frappuccino? Anyone ever drank a Frappuccino?
Lots of head
I'm
nods.
going to tell you how we created Frappuccino, and then how can we apply that concept to telehealth, and then also we're going to talk about how to the yin and yang of thinking in opposites, which if there was one technique, if I only had one technique to use in my life, it would be the opposite technique. It's the most powerful technique out there, and we call it creative destruction. And so I always put it as the last technique because that's going to be the one you're going to remember the most. But so we'll talk about those two techniques. See you in 15 minutes.
All right, we're going to come back because Chick loves time, and we're at 3:46. So I think there's a couple people trickling in, but we have a good group here, so we can go ahead and get started. Chick, go ahead.
Okay, great. So our next how might we question is, how might we create a paradigm shift so we aren't simply translating in-person practices to the virtual space? So to try to do a paradigm shift, the technique that I like to use is called a smash up. Now, previous one was an atypical analogy. The smash up is wilder. The smash up is when I've got a really, really tough situation. Give you an example. 1994, Pepsi. Pepsi calls up and says, we need a new drink. I go, okay, so what do you want to create? And they said, we want to create something that's clear because that's what the American public wants. And I said, yeah, that's right. It's called water. And they go, we would never sell water. And I'm going, why not? And they go, because Nestle owns the water market. They own Perrier and they got Nestle bottled water. And there's not a good profit margin on it anyway. And I said, so you want to create a clear drink? Who are you competing against? And they go, 7-Up. I go, okay. So I go, I can't really help you on that one. The brainstorm wasn't going anywhere. So they created a drink called Crystal Pepsi on their own. I don't know if you ever saw it. It lasted 3 months on the market. It was worse than the new Coke. Their tagline for it was, you've never seen a taste like this. Well, you never did because it only lasted 3 months. Homer Simpson spoofed it, calling it Invisible Cola, and Jon Stewart called it Crystal Meth Pepsi. So they pulled it off of the market, and they said, okay, well, because they just weren't into the brainstorm. We never did the brainstorm because I couldn't design it for them because they kept saying, we're not going to sell water, and it's got to be, it's got to have a fizz to it, and it's got to look like this, but it's got to be clear, and we've already got 7-Up. So I said, wait a minute, let's go and do a smash up. Let's take the very popular bottled water that you know is the #1 bottled water, especially for people that don't drink alcohol like myself. I can't drink. So I go to a party and I get Perrier and I hold the bottle, or I put it in a cocktail glass with a lemon. Let's go and look at the hottest new drink that's starting up now. Starbucks had just moved away from Seattle, opened a store on Broadway. So there you got caffeine, bottled water, and you got Pepsi. So I said, I'm going to show you what a smash up is. So to be able to understand a smash up, I taught myself how to juggle, and I went into the brainstorm room and I had a bottle of Perrier, a cup of Starbucks, empty cup of Starbucks, and a can of Pepsi, and I juggled all three things. And they go, hey, that's pretty cool. I go, yeah, we're going to smash those three things together and create a new drink for you. And they're just like looking at me. And I go, okay, what do you like about Starbucks? Caffeine. What do you like about Pepsi? Well, we've got distribution in all stores. And we've got the cold and not cold, chilled, but we've got chilled distribution. What do you like about Perrier? Well, really high profit margin, small bottle, 9.5 ounce. So let's say, so we came up with the idea, let's create a co-brand with Starbucks, 9.5 ounces in a small bottle, colored bottle, distributed in the store, chilled. That's how Frappuccino was invented. People don't know that Frappuccino was created by Pepsi. Then Starbucks, 5 years later, took the whole thing, bought it out and all that. But that brainstorm is written up in brainstorm history as the most successful brainstorm, according to Harvard Business School. That brainstorm that took 4 hours generated $2 billion industry. And there's a whole case study written up. And so what's the point? The point is the smash up technique. I didn't create that technique. The Medicis in the Italian Renaissance created that technique. They said when you want to create something, they would throw a dinner party. They would bring 3 different types of people together to discuss things and try to smash it all together. And it's in a wonderful book called The Medici Effect, written by this wonderful, I'm blocking on his name, but it's The Medici Effect. And so what could be your 3 things? I'm just playing with you. What could be your 3 things? Amazon is everywhere. When you've all talking about technology, people getting used to it. Hey, I live in a high rise and I'm the young person at 75, but everybody's got Alexa. They've all got their smartphones, and we're starting to get things, and we just got our electronic front door ring, they're getting there. So how could Amazon help us? Let's think Generation Z. Think about that young population that's really into social media. And then let's think about the thing that everyone is talking about right now, open AI, Chat GPT. So I was just in a long conversation with Google about that, and we're writing an article together about how can Chat GPT help you brainstorm? That could be interesting. How is OpenAI going to help you brainstorm? I mean, you could say, how would Einstein, the NFL, and somebody else look at my supply chain challenge? I mean, you could create the most unbelievable. So that's what we're doing. We're experimenting with Sydney and Bing and all those things. But guess what? On Thursday, Microsoft is going to announce that Chat GPT is going to be embedded in Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. So you're going to get it embedded in your workflow. So and they also just announced today, it just came across about 2 hours ago, the new form of ChatGPT, it's GPT-4. This is the new one that OpenAI just released this morning. They gave it the advanced placement tests that our students take. It passed 92% of them. So you're going, wait a minute. How can ChatGPT working in, I mean, we know it's going to work in call centers, but how could ChatGPT work in telehealth? So I want you to do, this is a wild smash up, and some of you might not be that familiar with ChatGPT, with OpenAI. If you're not, have one of your team members sort of talk about it a little bit. But how could, if we smashed up Amazon, social media Generation Z folks, young folks, and ChatGPT, and you got to use all three. That's the cool thing about a smash up. You got to use all three things. How would that help you in telehealth? And just to let you know, I mean, I use this exercise with a lot of people. So I was doing a brainstorm 10 years ago for Serta mattress, Simmons mattress, excuse me. They bought Serta, but and they said, we want to create the next mattress. And I said, okay, I want you to smash up people buying from home. I mean, people buying stuff online, a mattress online. I want the mattress to not get bed bugs, because from a health point of view, and not exude, volatile gases, and to be able to give a 120-day guarantee, which therefore generated that it would have to be made out of latex and delivered to the home. And guess what we created? Mattress in a box. And my friend then took the idea and started a company called Casper. So that's where Casper comes from. If any of you have a Casper or Layla or any of those different mattresses in a box, through a smash up. So for us, our smash up is Amazon, social media conscious Generation Z, young folks, and OpenAI. This is going to be tough. It might be rewarding though. That's my hope. You got 10 minutes to start smashing it up, and then we'll start talking about what your thoughts, and we'll do it not in group, but live, all of us together, because I'll start challenging you with some of your ideas you come up. So smash up those three things, and how could this smash up help us in telehealth? Go, have fun.
So I just typed in, how would Einstein in the NFL fix telehealth into ChatGPT? And one of the answers was, another way the NFL and Einstein could improve telehealth visits is promoting the use of technology to enhance patient experience. For example, the NFL could leverage its virtual reality experience and create immersive telehealth experiences that stimulate in-person consultations. Einstein's legacy includes contributions to the development of lasers, which could be used to create a new medical technology to enhance telehealth visits. So there you go.
Wow.
Thank you, ChatGPT.
Whoa.
So anyway, take about 10 minutes, smash up Amazon, OpenAI, and while you're doing that, I'll type that in there and see if we can compare notes. Yeah. Yeah, just ask them, screw the 10 minutes.
Go for it.
Yeah, go for it. All right, let's come back together. Sorry, Rebecca.
It's okay. A lot of great mashups going on, and not just one idea, many ideas, Chick, are being shared wildly. So this is a good one.
Yeah, and
All
what
right,
I
so-
like is when they present, then we'll go and let other people add on to them. So, present what they think is a cool idea, or a couple of them, and then we'll build off of them.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to choose one individual to share one of the ideas, and then we're going to build off of that idea as we hand the mic around. All right?
No, I didn't. I was thinking about Amazon using the older technology of Netflix or Blockbuster when they would send you a DVD and you send it back. If that could be a device in order to connect to telehealth, and it goes out to a patient, and then they put it back in the mail and send it back. with AI,
Wonderful.
and maybe our Generation Z is doing videos on how to operate that, giving them all that background on how you're going to connect, what your expectations are of your visit, and then back into the mail and away it goes. So there's not any of that responsibility of holding on to that or remembering how you used it for that visit.
Wow. And I love that. I love that idea. Go play off of it, somebody.
We kind of played off what you were talking about with the use of, even some people who are further up in age know how to use Alexa. So what about Alexa MD, where you start this conversation like straight through there, use the open AI to incorporate some of the, people are saying, physicians don't like this. Well, we do pathways all the time. We have pathways for every disease process in the urgent cares and the ER. So it's not that far of a shift from that, and use that open AI to get that information out and then be able to connect with that person virtually, perhaps even using a social media platform like Facebook in the metaverse or Oculus or something where you could have like really a virtual visit that's really almost as good as you can get as far as being in person. And then how you could incorporate those things into taking good care of a patient.
Good. And make them play Beat Saber after.
But I mean, what I loved is that you could send a package with a camera and with a built-in microphone and the whole thing, how to hook it up to your whatever, or it could tie into your Alexa device, which already has the microphone and everything built in. So go, I love it.
Well, one thing that we discussed in mental health is gamifying and using OpenAI and an Amazon Web Services backend to learn about your client without actually asking them questions, because you can only learn so much by saying, "How are you feeling today?" And by using the technology, because I mean, we said, what in Gen Z, some have more of a connection to their device than they do family members. So if they can sit with a device and have a chat with them to give insight to their clinician before or after or even during an appointment, that's a great opportunity.
Wow. That is a big idea. That's a really big, so a friend of mine, Google this name and you'll get tears in your eyes. James Arrigo is a 30-year-old living in Maine. He had a concussion, a really bad concussion, had to learn how to study and walk all over again while he was at James Madison University. And his mother, unfortunately, was passing away from myeloperipheraria and was in the hospital. He would go and play music to her, because his mother bought the son, James, a guitar to try to get him back to get mental capabilities and all back. So she kept watching him play the guitar. Well, he got pretty good at it. And then everybody in the hospital wanted James to play a song. Well, then one oncologist said, "Hey, we got this pediatric patient. Would you go play a song for that boy? He only has like 2 weeks to live." Well, James goes, and the parents of the boy are there. James goes, "Let's write a song together," and got the parents to videotape it. Now James travels the world to pediatric oncology hospitals. He's funded by the National Cancer Foundation, and that's what he does for a living. Every week, another pediatric oncology patient with the family or the community, they create a music video. And so the reason why I mentioned this is that James called me 2 years ago and goes, "I can't go into the hospitals any longer because of COVID." So we came up with the idea, let's use VR. So he got a bunch of donated Oculus units, sent it off to about 15 different kids from around the world that had a couple of months to live. And he built a boot camp of all those kids doing just what you're talking about. They were talking to each other. They sort of gamified the last couple of weeks of their life. And I mean, the parents and I mean, it's watch the video, and Zoom gives an award every year for the best use of Zoom. 2 years ago, James won that global award for the best use of Zoom with these pediatric kids. So just look at James Arrigo. So I think kids are going to really embrace this technology, and the parents will really embrace it if it could help the kid or their parents, the senior citizen. So yeah, I think and you get these unbelievable conversations that I don't think we would get face to face.
We've got one other share here.
Well, it's kind of an add to the last idea of the gamifying and bringing in the device. And kind of one of the things that we threw out was using the, Gen Z's interactions with their phone on social media sites such as TikTok and those types of things to be able to predict potential eating disorders or depression and cyberbullying, those types of things, to really be able to, intervene even without kind of forcing them to talk about it, just by their, social media interactions.
So there's your opposite. There's your flipping. We talk about all the cyberbullying or the anorexia that's being caused by TikTok videos. Flip it. And that's what we're going to talk about. That will be our next technique, because thinking that opposite, just as if you don't have the budget, well, what happens if you don't do it? That is actually the biggest. Albert Einstein said the hardest move to make is in the opposite direction. But a lot of times that's where the correct answer is. So thank you for playing the Smash Up game. I hope you had fun with it. And it's actually a game. I mean, you could turn it into a game with your family. Just go and say, I take these 3 things and you got to smash them up, and we got to create, it could be your own version of Shark Tank or something like that.
And ChatGPT has an answer for you too. If you type this question in, it will give you 4 recommendations.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Oh, Dan, that was amazing.
I emailed it to you so you can read it.
Oh, thank you. Wouldn't it be cool to tie ChatGPT into the evening news to be able to tell if you're getting? Just think.
Instant fact check.
Yes, as a fact checker. Yeah. So I get to go and share with you the last technique. And so let's see if I click here. How might we address clinical role staffing shortages? Okay, so that's going to be an interesting one. How might we address clinical role staffing shortages? So I want to go and show you the opposite technique. My challenge is, you ask the question, what opposite can redefine what's possible in staffing? So it goes back thousands of years. The sun rises, the sun sets, everything goes to its opposite. Learn to see things backwards, inside out, and upside down. Your dyslexic clients will do really well at this. So I got asked to go to LA to help the police department, the LAPD, after the Rodney King situation and the looting and the fires and the whole thing. And I said, okay, where's your challenge? And they go, we follow the manual. The manual says if there's going to be a riot, if you think there's going to be a riot, you close everything in the vicinity down. It's just like I have a water leak actually right now in my condo. And what does the plumber say? Shut off the water. Okay, so you close everything down. The problem though, when you follow that LAPD manual and you've already had this incident with Rodney King being beaten, people want to go and get their voices heard. And you shut everything down, meaning all the schools are shut down, work shut down. Where do people go? To the streets. So I said to them, what could you have opened instead of shutting down when you think there's going to be a riot? And they go, well, we could have opened Disneyland. Well, we could have got Disneyland could have been free. We could have opened the Coliseum who could you have had at the Coliseum to attract people? Well, we could have had basketball people and they'd be free shooting or slam dunks or autographs. And then we just started riffing on this. And they go, wow. So my point is, did you read about Starbucks closing all the stores? I mean, as of 2 months ago, they closed 19 major stores in major cities, but they're closing more. Here's the owner or founder said, we were beginning to close stores because of safety issues. This is just the beginning. There are going to be many more. Well, it's just like, what are we doing with the grocery stores? We're closing them down in the difficult areas. And I've been working with a community nearby to you all called Newport News. And what they're going in our tough neighborhoods, there are no grocery stores. They're all no named grocery stores. And you're going, So what I've been challenging Starbucks with is saying, what can you turn that store into? You already own the real estate or have the real estate. What could the baristas do instead? And how would you sort of keep it safe? So we've been running that brainstorm. So my challenge to you is regarding clinical staff shortages, and Dan and Rebecca, if you want to reframe that question any better than the way I said it. My thing is, what I want you to do is make a list, and this is sort of fun. I mean, it's sort of wild. What's the exact opposite of what we are doing now to deal with the staff shortage issues? What's the exact opposite? Now, a way you can get to that is you could go, okay, what's a list of what we are doing? And then what's the exact opposite? You can do it that way. Or the other question I'd love to say is, what would you never do to solve staffing shortages? And make a list of nevers. What would you never do? And you can be as outrageous. You don't have to be politically correct. It's just because this is brainstorming and we're trying to go and see outside the lines and then bring it back inside to a correctness. So you can either ask, what are we doing now to deal with staff shortages? And then what's the exact opposite? Or you can start just by saying, what would we never do, and make a list of those. So Dan, Rebecca, can you add anything to that brainstorm?
No. Yes and no.
Did I make it clear enough?
Yeah, I mean, I think across all professions, we have a shortage of clinical roles. So how would you solve for that? There's people saying we need pay. There's people saying we need new care teams. There's people saying we need technology. There's lots of solutions out there, but those are all been done before. So maybe what's the opposite of pay raises and training more people? I mean, that seems to be what everyone's throwing out there. So what would be the opposite? I don't know. That's my provocation.
Yeah. And then that's the real thing of like, well, what would we never do? And just be outrageous for 5 minutes and make a list of 10 things we would never, ever, ever do to solve staffing issues. And then let's see if we can flip them. But you got to come up with the never list first before you start flipping. You don't just come up with one and then, oh, well, we'll flip that. No, you got to be outrageous and come up with a list. And then you start flipping the list. So Great. Have fun. Okay, let's go.
There you go. You'd never pay a physician less.
Great.
Yeah, I think you hit the one on the head there. No, you would never. All right, you good? Okay, I think we're gonna share out. So, right, is that what we're doing, Chick?
Perfect.
Anyone have a thing they'd never do? We had lower physician pay was one over here.
Yeah. So let's play off of that because that's a big one. So lower physician pay. Someone's just said that, but now I want flip it with the yes, the yes and. What's turn that into, I call it, flip the opposite into an opportunity. So what's the opportunity there? And that's to everybody, just throw out ideas, we're brainstorming.
What else motivates them?
Higher compensation to their outcomes.
Tie compensation to outcomes.
Okay.
Unlimited vacation instead of pay. Just like Netflix.
Keep going. I want a couple more. How do we do that? We're going to be paying physicians less. Push.
Free healthcare.
Uh-huh.
Time to do mission work.
Mm-hmm.
Or sabbaticals.
Good. Good.
Gym membership.
Breakfast burritos.
And I heard something about memberships. Are there certain memberships to certain things? Don't. But
Netflix is a common theme.
Yes, okay.
Giving them the tools to find their joy and the space for that too.
Mm-hmm.
Work from home.
Yeah.
Paying for all the licensure, board certifications, all that.
That would be interesting.
Pay them less, but allow them to spend double the time with patients.
Wow. But we got to play with that. Keep playing. Okay, I want some ands off of that because that's a wild one.
Flexible scheduling at all hours of the day.
Flexible schedule, all hours of the day.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Location freedom.
Location freedom.
Not just work from home.
Yeah, especially with telehealth, work from the islands.
Mm-hmm.
Which kind of came into one of the opposites we talked about over here, right? Which was we talked about an NDA and just getting rid of those and sharing staff across multiple facilities in the community.
Mm-hmm. Good. So opposites is a way of, it's a technique, it's a way of thinking, and it's what I use if the easier techniques don't work. And I'm just going to give you my toughest example. And so 30 years ago, I went home to visit my parents who were in their mid 80s with my brother was there. And it's a little town in New Jersey called Cape May, New Jersey. It's by the water. And it's Thanksgiving. And we found out that my father had leukemia and was given 6 months to live. And my mom comes to me and says, what do we do about Christmas? You know, what would be, you know, what, I mean, this is going to be his dad's last Christmas. And I'm going, okay. And one of the things we always did after we eat the turkey, we always would go around and say, so what do you want for Christmas? Well, my mom said, should we still do, I mean, what? And I said, yeah. So I said, and I'll deal with it, Mom. So I'm the extrovert in the family. Brother's the introvert. My brother is a pain management psychologist at in Vermont, and I said, Mom, what do you want for Christmas? I thought that'd be easy. And the first thing she said was a meat thermometer. I'm going, a meat thermometer. She ran to the kitchen and got her meat thermometer that was cracked. And she said, I need a new one. This isn't accurate. And I'm thinking, that's a present for the last Christmas. I'm just thinking in my brain, okay, I'll get you a meat thermometer. Mom, is there anything else you want? She goes, nope, that's all. just come home, maybe spend an extra day. I said, Dad, what do you want for Christmas? And my dad said, a wood burning kit for carving ducks. Okay, that's cool. My brother, he said, I think we should go on a cruise, because my brother had been thinking about this. There was a cruise that he was checking out, and it would be sort of safe for my parents and all that. The whole family could go, because we've never traveled much together. And I go, Larry, that's really cool. Where should we go? And before I got any further, my mother said the first yes, but. You know, Dad does not like to travel. He gets constipated. And I'm going, so we're not going to talk about a trip because of Dad's constipation? And my mother said yes. And my father agreed. So I go, okay. So I said, okay, I've got an idea. I want to buy Mom and Dad, I want to buy you new clothes. My parents grew up very poor in Philadelphia. And I want to take them back to Philly, stay at a hotel, and go to a store called John Wanamaker, which was a big department store, and buy my mom and dad some new clothes. My brother thought, that's cool. And we started talking about it, and my father says his killer phrase. He goes, son, I wear the same clothes every day. I don't want any new clothes. I'm also losing so much weight. They wouldn't fit. And, you know, we're losing it. And I'm going, what do I do? That's when you use the opposite technique. I said, Mom, what would you never, ever want for Christmas? And just like this, she said, a bikini. You know, an 82-year-old in a bikini in Cape May, New Jersey I think that's outlawed. You can't do that. So my father started laughing. My brother started laughing. I said, Mom, let's make a list of 10 things that we would never get for Christmas. And we made a list, and we had fun, like a new car, a new house, a computer. And now this is 30 years ago. I put that list on the refrigerator door, and I said, over the next week, look at that list of opposites and see if any of them are a good idea. 2 days go by, don't hear anything. Finally, I get a call from my mother, and she said, son, do you think you could teach me that computer? Because if you could, then I could do family history. And could you get this thing called a modem? My brother was talking about a phone modem. Could you get something like that? Because I can't go to the library in Cape May because my mother was on a walk. And she said, I'd like to tie into genealogy. And is there software you can? And my brother, I could see, had been talking to her about genealogy software. So I just want to let you know what that next Christmas was like. It didn't go well. I gave my mother the meat thermometer. I gave my father the wood burning kit. And the big surprise was I got him a Hewlett-Packard 286 Vectra computer modem monitor. It was in their family room. And what went wrong with this is I tried to teach my parents how to use it. I yelled at them when they put their coffee cup next to the keyboard. I tried to pressure them to learn word processing on Christmas Day. And I flew home to Charlottesville the next day. They hadn't used it. My mother was upset. And she said, please move the computer to your bedroom. You can use it when you get home, but look, it's got too many wires and it frustrates me, and I would never use it. I got back to Charlottesville, and for 4 months, I thought, the one brainstorm I wanted to work didn't. And on April 10th, a month before my father passed away, I got a letter typed off of that computer, which is what hangs over my desk right now. I'm looking at it right now. Here's what it said. Dear Chick, we went to a New Year's Eve party and told all the neighbors what a stupid present you bought us. I mean, who would buy 80-year-olds a computer? Everybody agreed. The next week, the neighborhood kids heard about the computer. The 8 and 9 and 10-year-old kids came to my parents' home to look at it up in my bedroom. My parents, of course, went up with them. Who do you think taught my parents how to use the computer? The 8 and 9 and 10-year-olds. My father passed away. I got the letter. My mother did the genealogy, but I moved my mother to assisted living. What do you think happened after that? She wanted the computer in her little living room. She wanted all the neighborhood kids to come on over to help her. For the next 2 years of our life, those kids kept my mom alive. This is the best idea I've ever had. And it's when I needed it. And it didn't come from asking 5 whys. It didn't come from an analogy. It didn't come from any analytics. It came from, Mom, what would you never, ever want for Christmas? And then flipping it into something she didn't even know she wanted, because it was a blind spot. And that's what creativity is all about. It's finding your blind spots, and you only find them since you can't see them. You only find them by challenging them, by going, well, I would never take ballroom dancing, or I would never do this, or I would never do that. And then go, well, what's right about ballroom dancing? Maybe there's a possibility there. So that's where this opposite technique, one of the ways that you can play with it is you can say, what should we start doing? But then also offer, what should we stop doing? What should we keep on doing? What should we do differently? And this is a way of putting opposite thinking into what we love and the left brain loves, is the 4-quadrant technique. So I teach this with my MBA students, but it's basically, what should we start? But then what should we stop? What do we never do? Well, it's right about that we might do. So you see the constant opposite that I just play with in my brain to try to come up with ideas for my clients. And I'm just going to close by telling me my second favorite idea. At 65, I fell and broke my right arm, landed on my funny bone. And I can't write, I can't draw, I got trigger finger, all 5 fingers of my right hand are like, trigger locking. I'm now left-handed for the last 10 years. So I can't draw cartoons, can't play golf, can't do any of that stuff. The coolest thing though, is that I've never been left-handed. 65 years again right-handed, now 10 years again left-handed. And I can tell you, my brain is on fire. It won't stop. So I'm not saying break an arm. I'm just saying break a pattern. Challenge your watch, put it on another arm. Listen to different music every once in a while, not just your Spotify playlist. Watch news from a different station. Drive a different way to work. Enter the grocery shopping in a different doorway. Challenge yourself to break your patterns, and it can be as simple as just go and everybody cross your arm. Just lay one arm on top of each other. Do you know that's the way you've done it your whole life? Just do it the other way. It will jumpstart the other side of your brain. But if you really want to feel it, take your hands like this and put your hands together with your fingers interlocked. Okay? Now you know which thumb is on top. And this is the way you've always done it. You want to feel the other side of your brain, remove your hands and put your hands back together with the other thumb on top. Does that feel weird? So what I'm saying to you, during the day, cross your legs the other way. Cross your arms the other way. Interlock your hands a little differently. If you do yoga, interlock your hands the opposite way. It will get different muscles. Actually, my yoga teacher told I have to do yoga because of my osteoporosis. And they're always telling me about, well, interlock your hands this way because it's getting different muscles. So break your patterns. That's going to help you stay creative. And so my final exercise for you is I want you to go now and just reflect. I want you to go and reflect. Whoop, are we hearing some other feedback come in? So I want you to go. Is it gone? Okay. I want you to just take 5 minutes, personal reflection now, and make a list of 5 things you would probably never, ever do in your life. You might thought they would be cool, but I'll never do them. I want to take 5 minutes and make a list of 5 things. I get my students at UVA to make a list of 5 courses they would never take at their 4 years at UVA. And then after you make that list, takes about 2 minutes, look at that thing of 5 and say, is there anyone on those opposites that actually, it'd be pretty cool to do it because it might make my brain more agile. Because remember, that's our goal, is that agile brain. So just this is a 5 minutes of silence to 5 things you would probably never do. And then any of those 5 you might do. And then we'll come back in 5 minutes. All right. Thanks so much for doing that. And I just want to thank you for participating. I call it playing. And my closing thought comes from Plato. I never read Plato with my dyslexia, but I heard this on NPR one time and I thought it was really cool. Plato said, human beings strive to achieve immortality. And there's 3 ways to achieve immortality. 1 is by having children. 2nd is by planting trees. And the 3rd is by creating ideas and help make them happen. Go forth, achieve immortality. And thank you so much for this opportunity. And I turn it back to Rebecca and Dan. They'll do the follow-up. And I think we have some possibilities of some follow-up on this 30 days out, but they'll explain all that.
Thanks, Chick.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so if you felt the creative energy and you have some ideas and you go out into, the rest of this event and feel like you want to keep drawing on that string, we did speak with Kathy about the opportunity to have a 30-day follow-up, and so we can get your email and send out a message and see if we can, in 30 days, reconvene and follow up on some of the ideas that maybe you have captured from this and see how we can continue to support you. I don't know if that interests anyone though. If that does, raise your hand and we can send out that blast. If it doesn't, that's fine too. Yeah, a couple folks. Awesome. All right. We'll work with Kathy to get that list out. We really appreciate your time today and your creativity, and go forth and be curious. And yes, and.
A round of applause for Chick and Rebecca and you all. So.
Yes, thank you.